Today's episode is going to be a little more laid back. We're going to chat. We are going to talk about mainly a topic that I feel is resonating with a lot of us right now, and that's the idea of letting go, the idea of attachments, and how that plays into our perception of control. But first, before we begin, as usual, let's have an intro. Hello, my heart-centered souls, and welcome to Spilling the Tea Leaves. This is your sacred space, and I'm your host, Michelle. I'm honored to be a guide in your journey and grateful you're a part of mine. Here, we dive deep into the empowering realm of crystals, energy healing, spiritual growth, and everything in between without the gatekeeping. So sit back, relax, let's reawaken our spirit, one cosmic tea leaf at a time. Welcome back. I know I've had these gaps between episodes, and I am fully aware of these gaps. And during the summer, I already tend to slow down anyway because my daughter is home from school and I try to spend as much time with her. Plus, I have two businesses that I try to run as best as I can. And unfortunately, some things do fall from the wayside. This podcast does not pay any bills. This podcast is purely a passion project. So when I do it, I try to do it right. And when I'm in a positive mood where I can share that positivity with you. And that's a little bit of what I want to talk about today. I think a lot of us right now are struggling with this concept of letting go. When I say letting go, I don't only mean letting go of material things, of attachments, of relationship, because that is also very much included, but letting go of the idea of what something is supposed to look like. Right? The idea of I am supposed to be a well-rounded person who has her stuff together and I don't drop any balls, and I am there for everybody, and I am helpful and I am kind all the time, 100% of the time, and people love me. And it's this idea of how I almost want to be perceived. And a lot of us, whether we recognize it or not, have this attachment of how we want to be perceived. And within that, there is this idea of control. If I can control how people perceive me, there is a security and safety in that. And I'm here to tell you that is absolutely exhausting. It's exhausting. It's tiring. And it's not good for you. It's not good for you physically, mentally, emotionally, and it does nothing for your spiritual development. I know. It's not good. So I hope you have your coffee, because it's just going to be you and me. We're just going to talk and we're going to chat and we're going to do a little bit of self-exploration. And I'm hoping that some of the questions that I ask may trigger some deeper explorations for yourself, which is the purpose of this podcast, right? So I usually do a lot of informative podcasts, what crystals to use, rituals, or just educational episodes. But this one is almost going back to the original intent of this episode. And also, again, we're going to play into the idea of letting go. If you've been around long enough, you know that I started this episode with a friend, and I loved her. I still love her. I think she's an amazing person. She is this being who I find moves so easily through life and is so, she can adapt to things, and I have difficulty doing that. Now, this goes back to the idea of perception. I move every 2 to 3 years, and I change friends, change homes, change cars. I mean, down to the furniture. I change absolutely everything, not because I want to, but because I have to. I don't have a choice. I don't travel with a lot because it's my family. We are allotted very specific weight on our shipments. So my perception of that is like, oh, this is just stuff. I can let it go. I can get stuff when I get to the other side. When I started the podcast with my friend, the intent was always, it's going to be me and her. It's going to be a 2-person thing. I am never going to do a podcast by myself. There's no way that I'm going to be able to talk for 30 minutes to an hour by myself. Who is going to want to listen to me for that long? And I don't want to put myself out there for so long and open myself up for judgment from others. This is my original idea, right? So no, absolutely no way, no how. And I held on to that idea for a while, and it took me some time to come back to these episodes and start recording again. And look at me, I can talk for 30, 45, an hour. I think my longest episode is an hour and a half, and I'm like, okay, I need to cut this down drastically. So I let go of that idea, and it turned into one of my favorite passion projects of all time. It's creating these podcasts. It's connecting to people. I have strangers emailing me, telling me that I've helped them, telling me that I've managed to open up their eyes to this other idea, telling me that they've started exploring gods and goddesses and their ancestors. And that is, I cannot explain to you how incredible that is, that to hear that I had an impact on this stranger out there in the world, that they've started on this journey, and I was a part of that trigger to help that exploration. So letting go of the original thought of, I cannot do this by myself. This was never supposed to be just me, to, oh my God, I absolutely love this. And I am actually helping, or inspiring is a better term, people to explore their spirituality, go in deep. Like that is, I can't explain to you how amazing that is to me. It's probably one of my favorite things aside from being a mom. So me moving every 2 to 3 years, changing my furniture, letting go of a lot is easy for me because I've done it for so long. I've done it for 15 years, going on 16. So it doesn't seem this big a deal. But if you ask me to get rid, and I bring this up because I just did it this morning, of a pot, okay, that I bought in IKEA when I lived in Abu Dhabi 4-5 years ago. I'm going to tell you that I will struggle. And it's not because it's a pot or it's expensive. It's the idea of this item that has been with me for a lot longer than a lot of my other items. I had my dog unfortunately passed away this week. My dog was 15 years old. And of course I was devastated. Anybody would be devastated. I'm still devastated. His passing sort of triggered this episode because there was a moment where I thought to myself, I should have let him go sooner, because his passing was not peaceful. And I knew just the day before I was at the vet, and I knew he was having issues, and I second guess myself. I'm like, listen, I know he's having issues, but maybe he can get a little better, or maybe, I know he's not uncomfortable. I know he has difficulty walking, so I got him a stroller, what they call here a pram, and that's how I would walk him with my other dog, Charlie. And the vet looks at me, she's like, look, I can't give you a definite answer. I can tell you that if you were to tell me today that, he needs to be let go, or he needs to be put to sleep in a peaceful way, I wouldn't blame you. I would say, yes, it's time. And I still didn't want to, because I did not want to let him go. Of course, we don't want to let our family members go like that. And unfortunately, he ended up having several seizures the next day after I had this conversation with the vet. And long story short, it's me and my husband rushing him to the vet, wrapping him up in blankets, and taking him to be put to rest. And this is not to be depressing. I'm so sorry, it's triggering for somebody, but it was not a scenario that I had imagined. And as I sat there looking at him, I'm like, I should have let go sooner. And it's hard. I understand letting go. It's hard. I understand that holding on to this idea of permanence, of security, of what makes us us, or what we define as defining us, if that makes sense, is sometimes, a lot of the times, to our detriment. Now, whether we're holding on to past regrets, past relationships, or recurrent relationships that's no longer serving you, even holding on to limiting beliefs about who we are, holding on to traumas, or using traumas to define who we are and why we do the things today, don't serve us. They are closing you off from opening yourself up to new, unimaginable possibilities. And it sucks. I am telling you, it sucks. I had a plan. I mean, this is the level that I've been working with, right? I had a plant that I loved. Everybody came into my house and complimented this gorgeous monstera plant that I purchased here when I first arrived to the UK. I am a plant lover. I am a Taurus sun, Taurus moon. I'm earthy. I love plants. If you take a sneak peek into my office, it is surrounded by plants. And this monstera was my pride and joy. It was my pride and joy. Here in the UK, they have thrips. If you are a plant person, you know that word is awful. So you walk in the grass and you come home and your clothes is covered in thrips, and the thrips get between the layers of the plants. And sure enough, my beautiful, stunning, gorgeous, massive, taller than me monstera was infected. And I'm like, no, I can save her. I can save her. I'm going to cover her up in saran wrap. I am going to use every natural pesticides with all the chemicals. Like, I went everywhere, and I could not save this plant. I couldn't. I can't. I couldn't. So I let it go. I let my plant go. And I know that's not a big deal, but to me, it's a huge deal, because again, it is this idea of like, this is not how it's supposed to be. I am supposed to save this plant. This plant is a sort of a little definition of me, because people come in and always comment on my plant. And even the simple act of picking it up and throwing it away in the trash is massive for me. And my mom, I had told my mom, and my mom says, if you see this thing in your house and it's not bringing you joy, I know she Marie Kondoed it a little bit. If it's not bringing you joy, but it's stressing you out every single time you see it, it should not hold space in your home. It shouldn't hold space for you. Toss it. And I did. And now when I walk into my family room and I don't see the plant, yes, I am a little sad with the idea that what it was, but it's no longer stressing me out. I know it's a plant, but it's the idea of the plant. And we all have that in our lives, whether it be relationships, whether it be that broken table that you're just like, oh, my mom gave me that. I can't get rid of it because it holds so much emotional value. But if it's stressing you out every single time you see it, it's no longer bringing you any sort of positivity. Now, in a lot of spiritual practices, there is this idea that nothing in life is permanent. Nothing. And the idea, these traditions suggest that our suffering stems from our attachments, be it to people, possessions, or even identities. This idea of how we identify, the label that we use that we're just going to hold on to. Now, I know there are identities that we can't run away from. There are responsibilities that we do have to do. I wish I didn't have to work. I wish I didn't have to worry about paying that bill. The water bill is very attached to me. We can't let go of a lot of those things unless we move off into the woods somewhere, which some of us do. Some people are like, I don't want to be a part of a society that is constantly forcing me to work a 9 to 5 or in order for me to enjoy 2 days a week. I get that. I fully am aware of that. Some of us don't have that choice because we have responsibilities and families. And that is an attachment that we cannot let go of at this time. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But the things that we do have some sort of say over, some sort of ability to remove ourselves from. Imagine for a moment the freedom of releasing these bonds. How would your life change if you didn't have these little things just holding you back? Whether it be the idea of who you are to other people, the idea of let's say you've always worn black, but you want to try a little color, but you've never worn color, so we're not going to do that. What does your life look like? What would your life look like if you were not defining yourself by the past, defining yourself with things? Many of us are familiar with Buddhism, and Buddhism views attachment as a primary source of human suffering. According to Buddhist teachings, attachment is seen as clinging to people, possessions, and identities, which ultimately leads to suffering and dissatisfaction. Now, they believe the path to overcoming this suffering involves cultivating a state of non-attachment, which means enabling individuals to experience life more fully with a deeper sense of peace. In Buddhism, the practice of non-attachment is emphasized as essential for achieving enlightenment and liberations from the cycles of rebirth and suffering. It involves letting go of our desires, expectations, and the need to control outcomes, fostering a state of acceptance and tranquility instead. I tell you, I have a big thing with controlling outcomes, and a lot of it is based on trauma. So I love therapy. I always advocate for therapy. I always tell people you should have a therapist, if you can afford it, to talk to at least once a month. And I know that's a very privileged take, and I completely understand that not all of us have the ability to have a therapist, a psychologist, or a counselor. I'm very lucky that our insurance covers a counseling, a therapist. I also advocate for journaling. Journaling is amazing, even if it's just putting your thoughts on paper. When you do that, you give yourself this other perspective on things that you may not be as clear during your waking time. So a lot of the times we're just working or being distracted with our phones or taking care of others, and we don't have the privilege of time to do that introspection. And if we do it before bed, we are just never going to get to sleep because our thoughts are everywhere. So journaling is a great way to get your ideas down to paper. And one of the things that I've discovered during journaling was that because of some traumatic experiences that I've experienced in my childhood, if you would have asked me this like 2 years ago, I was like, absolutely not. I don't control things. Like, what are you talking about? I absolutely do. In me trying to keep the peace with people and me trying to people please was a huge one for me, is a huge one for me. It's something that I'm actively working through. It was a way for me to control the outcome, because if everybody was happy to my own detriment, then nobody was fighting and there was no negative energy and everybody was happy and everybody was lovely. But the person who was secretly suffering was me, because I just took myself as a martyr and just dump it on me. And if everybody's happy, then nobody is fighting. And that was my attempt at control. It's not like a control type A person where they're trying to control your actions. It's more of trying to control the environment and just taking it all in so then people could be at peace. That, to me, when I learned that I did that, I was like, holy cannoli, I'm insane. I am insane. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And it made me reflect on every action that I had taken in the past. And it's exactly what I was doing. It was exactly what I was doing. And it wasn't, of course I didn't know it was control. I was just trying to make it so nobody would fight and it would be at peace, because I knew that I can take it. I can control it. If you've ever seen Coco, there is a song with Luisa, and she was the older sister, and the song was like, just put it on your sister. She can carry the weight. She can handle it. And every older sister, in the history of an older sister in a Latin culture, Hispanic culture, that was it. That was your role. That was your responsibility. And it struck so many of us that anytime the song would come on, I would just burst into tears, just absolutely sobbing in the car. That came out when my daughter was like in first grade, and I'm just driving in the car on the way back, crying from the corniche, like, oh, that's me. And so it wasn't until recently that I learned that a lot of those things that we do is to keep the peace, is to foster the state of tranquility with our family members. So I want to give you some homework. Well, let's not say homework. Let's not call it homework, because that's very traumatizing for a lot of kids. Let's not say homework. Let's say some activities that you can do that should help you self-reflect a little bit. Of course, I want you to do journaling. I want you to, let's be specific. I want you to write letters of forgiveness to yourself and others. You don't need to send them at all, of course. You're just going to write some letters. I really like the letter about the one writing a letter to yourself. And I want you to offer yourself forgiveness. And I want you to offer yourself a release of emotion that you've been holding on to. as you write, this might not come out in the first letter or in the second letter. It might even come out on the third or fourth. But I want you to write a letter and ask yourself for forgiveness for all the things that you kind of been holding on to. So if you maybe cheated on a relationship, if you made a choice that you regret and you kind of been holding on to, if you've treated a person in a not so kind way and you regret that choice, if you, whatever you feel that you're sort of holding on to, what kind of keeps you up at night or you think about, even if it's like writing those weird Facebook posts when you were, in your early 20s, the early Facebook post that makes everybody cringe, forgive yourself about that. So anything that's cringy, anything that triggers some heavy emotions, write it down and release it and let it go. And ask yourself for forgiveness and say, I forgive myself. And I know it sounds a little cheesy and it maybe even a little simple, but this activity in itself is going to be so helpful, so incredibly helpful. Of course, meditation is always amazing. Focusing on your breath and being present. I do like to do this before bed. There are some guided meditations that you can use. I have them linked up on my YouTube channel that you can just kind of scroll through. And of course, when you have community support, when you have others to share, if you have that friend that you trust, sometimes voicing it helps you process the emotion. Sometimes voicing it can help you kind of get it out a little bit. If you don't have a trusted friend, I don't know, I think I said this last time, but Threads on Instagram, you can keep it anonymous, right? Can you keep it anonymous? No, because it's attached to your Instagram. No, there's actually platforms that you can sort of keep it anonymous. Anyway, find some sort of online support group, even Reddit, an anonymous post. Please don't use your name if this is something like a big thing for you. If you don't want to be traced back to you, of course, keep the level of anonymity that you want, obviously. But even just typing it out and processing it and getting other people to just kind of listen is really, really helpful in supporting it, in processing it. If you can't afford a therapist or counseling or any sort of counseling, that's also really recommended. But again, I always go back to journaling just because sometimes writing it down and putting on a piece of paper is just, it sounds so easy, but it's so magical. It's so magical. A lot of us sometimes have this fear of like, what is on the other side of our fear? Like, what, if I let this go, what does the other side look like? And you're going to let that idea go too. You don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Know that when you're letting it go, you're opening yourself up to more possibilities, that you're opening up yourself up to the universe, bringing in positivity for you. Let go of the fear of what it looks like on the other side. Nobody is going to be as mean to you as you are to yourself. Unless you're a psychopath, but most of us are not psychopaths. So just, you're allowed to let it go. I'm giving you permission to let it go. Don't forget that holding on gives us a sense of control, yet it's releasing that control that we end up finding true peace. I'll have one more activity that you can do. I'm going to give you an example. When you go to a thrift store, I love going through a thrift store. Here in the UK, they call them charity shops. You will always see a collection of something, right? Because somebody's parent or grandparents had this collection of teacups, a collection of figurines. The first thing that the grandkids do is go in and get rid of it because they have no attachment to these items. They are not, these items don't control them, but I guarantee you, to the person who collected them, there was a control in it. There was this idea of possessing. And I'm not saying don't have your collectibles. If you want to collect something, go ahead and do it. But don't allow it to control you. If you have an item in your home that you're just like, oh, I have it because somebody gave it to me, or because this I don't know why this comes to mind, the wedding favors, I hate them. I cannot stand them. I don't even take them. I do take the centerpieces though, because I like the flowers and the vases. I like vases, but I think they're just a waste of money. We didn't have them on our wedding 15 years ago, and I love that now it's starting to be a trend where people don't do wedding favors. And so if you have wedding favors, let's say, there is no meaning to it to you. I guarantee you that unless it's your mom's or your child's, there is no repercussions for you letting it go. So grab the little thing and chuck it in the trash, because you don't need to hold on to it. While there may be special memories attached, the memories are in your head. They're not in the item. So go through your house, see what tchotchke you can be like, you know what, this doesn't really serve a purpose. It's just gathering dust, and let it go. And that's a really great way to start putting the idea of letting go into a physical process. As a matter of fact, I am staring at something right now that I'm like, you know what, I'm letting it go. I love them. I have these Alphonse Mucha paintings on my wall. They're not paintings, they're like posters. And there was a flood, and now I can see mold on the edge of one of them. And every single time I look at it, I'm like, oh, I love them so much. They're so beautiful, but it's going to make me sick. And I keep staring at it, and I'm like, I say I should throw it away, and I never do, but I'm going to throw it away. So I'm going to put what I am preaching into practice as well. I am so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you joined me on this episode. It's a little more personal. It's a little more one-on-one. Now, as you move forward today, I hope you carry the courage to let go and be open to the idea of possibilities, to the endless possibilities that await you, because they do await you. I would love to hear your stories of how you're letting go. If you've ever had any positive interactions or any positivity come from this podcast, please, 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 please let me know. I would love to hear your stories. You can share with me on social media. You can follow me online on Instagram at Remember Love. I love Threads. I'm really into Threads. So if you're on Threads, it's same, Remember Love. I have a TikTok. I just actually recently, well, not recently, a couple of weeks ago, I made this TikTok on a whim about Chat GPT being able to translate. No, not translate. Transcribe? No. Translate? No. Oh my God, I don't know what the word was. The word is completely escaping me. They're able to read your astrological chart and kind of spit out the interpretation. They can interpret, that's the word, your astrological chart. While it was accurate for some people, and people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. Other people were just like, this is horrible. I can't believe you're recommending this. My friends in Christ, I am not an astrology girly. Okay, so anything that I can use to help me is a positive. I do have friends that are really into astrology and they're amazing, but I'm not one of those people. Okay, I do have an app that's awesome. It's called Astro Matrix, and I love it. And I thought Chat GPT was like it. It's like a whole thing. If you go on my TikTok, it's Remember Love Healing. Go on my TikTok. You can see the video. You can save it. You can try it for yourself. It tells you how to get to it. Anyways, I has like 13,000 views, which for me is a lot. I'm not on TikTok a lot. And you can see the comments. Like some people are super mad at me and other people are like, oh, this is amazing. So you tell me what you think. But if you've, I don't know where I'm going with this. If you've ever found anything useful on this podcast, I would love for you to leave a comment. If you can review us on Apple Podcasts, that would be awesome. And I would be ever so grateful. If you have an idea for another episode, please let me know. You can go to spillingthetealeaves.com and there's like a little area that you can leave a suggestion, or you can email me at spillingthetealeaves@gmail.com. Until next time, keep embracing the change and growing into the best version of yourselves. Thank you for being a part of this. Love and light, and I'll see you next time. Bye.